Hi, welcome back to Jordan's Backyard Chickens. My name is Jordan Wright. Have you ever gone to the feed store and seen all the different feed bags and wondered which is best for your chickens? Well, this stream is perfect for you. Stick around because after we talk about how chicken is feed is made, I will answer your questions and also be sharing the results of yesterday's YouTube poll and giving you a sneak peek at the next big video coming to my channel. For those of you who have already submitted questions, thank you. Your engagement makes this community better, and I'll be answering as many as I can. Now, these are my experiences from helping families choose the right chickens for their needs. If you have different advice, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're watching this after the live ends, don't worry because I'll be checking the comments and responding to you. All right, let's get started. The journey of chicken feed from a whole grain to a pellet is a very interesting thing. Believe it or not, the commercial chicken feed that makes raising our chickens easier was first created around 1910. By the 1920s, it was readily and widely available on the market. Fast forward to today, and we have several different formulas, but they all boil down to four different basic feed forms. One, loose grains, two, mash, three, crumble, and four, a pellet. But have you ever wondered how whole corn and all the other ingredients transform into pellets that we pour into our chickens' feeders? For most feed manufacturers, the ingredients arrive at the facility by rail car or semi-truck. Before entering, of course, they're tested to ensure that they meet quality standards. And then once inside, each ingredient is carefully stored separately and accounted for, which when it's time to make a batch, typically 2,000 pounds or more, the real process begins. Loose grains and scratch feeds are the simplest to produce, as you would imagine. And think of it like baking a cake. There's a recipe that calls for specific amounts of each ingredient to be added inside, so you end up with an end result. Large companies, of course, use computers to measure ingredients precisely, while family run businesses still do this by hand and still get it correct. The grains are then poured into a massive mixer, ensuring for an even blend. You wouldn't want, if you have a feed bag that has corn, oats, and soybean, and then your vitamins and minerals, you wouldn't want to grab it and have corn on the bottom, soybeans in the middle, oats on the top, and just the vitamins and minerals thrown together. And that's what this mixer machine is doing. But what about mash, crumbles, and pellets? And that's where things get even more interesting. Before these feed formulas are mixed, the grains go through a grinding wheel. This process turns corn, or whole corn, into fine corn mash and does the same for each and every ingredient. Once ground, everything is mixed together with vitamins and minerals. If it's a formula for an unmedicated mash, it's now ready to be bagged and sold. But for medicated feeds, an important extra step is required. Medications like Amprolium, which is commonly used for chickens, are carefully measured, often by hand, because it's just such a tiny, minute amount needed per ton of feed. Once mixed, it's ready to be bagged. Here's where things get really fun though. Pellets and crumbles actually start off as a mash before going through additional processing. To make a pellet, first you need mash that's heated and mixed with a binding agent. Then it's pushed through a machine similar to a giant cheese grater that is forming into long pellet strands. And finally, a knife chops the pellets into the desired size. Some companies have larger standard size pellets, while others stick to smaller mini pellets. And to make crumbles, the pellets are sent through a crumbler machine which gently kind of smashes them together, breaking them apart, creating smaller bite-sized pieces. No matter what form of feed is being made, grains, mash, pellets, or crumbles, the final step is always weighing, bagging, and sealing. The feed is packaged upside down, stitched, closed, and stored until it's shipped out to feed our hungry chickens. If you ever get the chance to see a small granary and compare it to a massive high-tech feed mill, the difference is incredible. Small businesses rely on back-breaking manual labor, while big companies have computerized systems doing much of the work, including all the way down to palletizing, stacking the bags on the pallets, and wrapping the pallets so that they can be put on the shelves and ready for delivery. And that's the fascinating journey of how a single kernel of corn ends up in a pellet form inside your chicken feeder. Now, let's get ready for your questions. Question number 1. Jump over here. Question number 1 is, why do manufacturers have to add the vitamins and minerals to the feed when it's made? Okay, so earlier, as we were making the pellets and as we were making the crumbles, you might have remembered me saying that they have to be heated up. Well, the process of heating that up produces a result that is an unwanted result, but just unfortunately nothing we can do about it, called burn off. Well, during the process of burn off, your things are going to lose nutritional value, such as some of your lipids are going to be burned off, some of your vitamins and minerals are going to not be there and readily available. So the feed manufacturers have to come back, it's all measured and calculated, and add those in after the feed has already been finished and ready to be bagged. That way, what the feed tag says, like I had done the previous video on reading feed tags, is actually what ends up in the bag of food. I really appreciate your question. And question number 2 is, when and why do we need to feed grit to our chickens? Okay, so you're feeding a loose grain, or you want your chickens to actually get something nutritionally valuable out of scratch grain. So if you're buying it from my business, you're feeding a whole grain layer feed from Kraut Creek, for instance, we want to come back in with the grit so that our chickens are eating the feed. The grit they're eating, all of that is going down to their gizzard. And the gizzards are like a bunch of hammers that are pounding away and breaking that food that they're eating up into smaller, nutrient-rich and available bites. And if you're feeding grit, then your chickens are going to be able to digest the feed they're eating better than if you're not. Now, if you are feeding a mash, you can still feed grit, and sometimes the chickens will still need the grit. But if you're feeding a mash, that grinding wheel process is most of the time going to take care of the need to feed the grit and going to help them digest it better. That's why you'll always, most of the time, hear that people say that if they run an animal, the second time an animal eats it, which is completely nasty, but it just is a fact, that second animal is going to actually get more nutritional value out of it. That grit just helps speed that process up so the first animal can eat it and get nutritional value out of it. So question number 3 is, what do feed manufacturers use to add calcium to chicken feed? So, of course, we can use oyster shells or we can use calcium carbonate to add the calcium source to our chicken feed. Most of the time, the feed manufacturers are going to be using calcium carbonate. It's a calcium powder. One, it is probably cheaper than what oyster shells are, and 2, it's easier to store and easier to measure out and get the same exact every single time. So I really appreciate your questions on those as well. And why are my chickens knocking the feed onto the floor? Is a very common question that we get asked at the store. So, kind of just like we like some things more than what we like other things. Those things that chicken likes, for instance, the corn in their feed, they're going to pick out, and they're going to leave other things. And that other things that they're leaving, sometimes as they're looking for the things that they like, that's when they're knocking the feed onto the floor. We need to be making certain that we're always feeding them fresh feed, that we're not just taking and scraping the feed off the floor and putting it back into the feeder though. So for chicks, you need to be making certain that they're feeding a chick starter, and the chick starter is going to be fed from the time they're day olds until 6 or 8 weeks if you have a grower that you would want to switch them off to, and then that grower until they're laying. And then if you don't have a grower, you can feed a 22% or 21% chick starter from the time that they're born as day olds all the way up until they're laying. We don't want to have them lay eggs too early, and we don't want to feed them a layer feed, which could sometimes cause that, too early before they're laying, because that calcium is just going to build up in their body. Why is folic acid in all chicken feeds? Okay, so this is a really important question. And folic acid is an essential B vitamin that is essential for the DNA and RNA production in the body. So DNA is when both protein strands come together, which most people probably know what DNA is. In case you don't know what RNA is a single protein strand, and so it hasn't combined together with something. Basically, if you did not have folic acid in a chicken's body, their cells could not multiply, stay healthy, and reproduce, and that animal would die. Or if it does not have enough B vitamins or folic acid, then that's what will end up happening. I really appreciate everybody's questions. And each day I have something fun up on the channel on the community post, and I really appreciate each and every one of you for participating in it, and I hope that you're enjoying them. If you have any future ideas for things to put up on the community post on my Jordan's Backyard Chickens YouTube post, I would love to hear them. So this past time, today we have, let's see if this works. Yep. So today we have this question. It's testing your knowledge on a really cool duck. It's, what is the name of this beautiful duck? And there's 4 different answers. Is it a Mandarin duck? Is it a wood duck? Is it a Muscovy duck? Or is it an Indian runner duck? And here in the comments, I always make certain that I put the answer to it, because unfortunately with the way that YouTube works, YouTube does not actually allow me to put the answers in the polls. Kind of like if it was just a word poll, I would be able to go, and if you clicked on the correct answer or the wrong answer to that, you'd be able to see why it was the correct answer or why it was the wrong answer. So YouTube doesn't like that. I personally don't like to take just word polls, and I don't think from looking at what I had before with word polls and with image polls, that you enjoy image polls a lot more than what you do word polls. And so that's kind of my way around it, to be able to deliver you what I think is more enjoyable and what I personally like more when I'm on somebody else's community page. So yesterday I had a question. Broiler chickens are amazing birds that go from about 0.15 pounds to 7 pounds in 7 weeks or less. To get a broiler chicken, breeders and scientists crossed a White Plymouth Rock to what other breed? Was it a Buff Orpington, a Delaware, a Barred Rock, or a Barred Plymouth Rock, commonly known as a Barred Rock, or a White Cornish? And interestingly, people said Buff Orpington or Delaware. And if we click here in the comments, broiler chickens were crossed with a double-breasted, wide White Plymouth Rock to a fast-growing and mature Cornish. And the Plymouth Rock was on the female side and the Cornish was on the male side. So I thought it was a pretty interesting thing. I'm pretty interested in broiler chickens because they're a very fascinating breed. They're probably the only animal that I personally know of. Maybe quail mature just as fast. I personally have never raised any quail, but they definitely don't get to the same size. That a broiler chicken goes from that 1.15 or 0.17 pounds to 7 pounds in 7 weeks. So I am finishing up on my next video. My previous video, as you may have seen on the channel, or definitely if you have not seen it, I invite you to take a look at it, is the 10 most stunning chicken breeds in the world. And this video is going to be a beginner's guide to raising chicks. So what do you think of this video's beginning? Imagine waking up to the sound of tiny peeps and knowing you're about to raise a flock of happy, healthy chickens. But here's the thing. Raising chicks isn't just about setting up a cute little brooder box in the middle of a room. There are a few critical steps that you can do to make or break your chicken raising experience. I really appreciate your active participation and your watching my videos and my polls and here in this live stream. I hope you have a nice day. Bye.